Joining me now is New South Wales One Nation leader, Mark Latham. Mark, great to see you. Now, you know as well as anyone how our constitutional monarchy works. What did you make of the Prime Minister telling the world he is comfortable with our king, his words, comfortable with our new king interfering in our political process and supporting Labor's climate policies?
Well, the monarch and any head of state needs to stay out of politics. It's not for an unelected person to declare whether or not they're in favour of climate change policy. So this is a massive overreach. And I've got to say, it's one of the concerns about the new King Charles, that he has been so political in the past. He needs to learn the lesson of his late mother, who was impeccable, virtually impeccable for 70 years in staying out of active political debates, because if the head of state, the British monarch, is to survive in Australia, it's no good embedding yourself in very divisive debates, and anything politically, of course, will be divisive. It'll have some people in favour of your views, some against, and the golden rule is, if you want to hold those views and inject them into the public debate, run for elected office. Don't rely on a hereditary position, run for elected office. So this has been one of the concerns about the new King Charles. And of course, his son Harry is even worse, right off the radar. And Prince William has had some of this politics as well. So I think the best thing is to follow the model of the late Queen Elizabeth II, which was totally non-political. And it's the only way in which that institution can survive.
And yet, Mark, it strikes me that Albanese quite likes the idea of a monarch, a woke monarch, that approves of Labor's policies. So out goes all our constitutional arrangements of 122 years as Labor goes, oh, we've now got what we wanted all along. The top position, the sovereign, the monarch agrees with our policies. Away we go. We've seen some truly reprehensible comments, Mark, about the Queen here in Australia following her death. So activists have seized on the opportunity to lay the blame of all the woes of colonialism squarely at her feet. Even beyond the usual suspects, there was the shocking decision by the AFLW, the Women's Football League, to Australian Footy League, to axe the minute's silence as it was the Indigenous round. And there's this idea, Mark, that somehow the Queen is so offensive to Indigenous Australians that you can't possibly mention her or even acknowledge that she's died. What is going on, Mark?
Well, it's hard to believe that people have got a problem with Queen Elizabeth. What's she ever done against the Indigenous cause in Australia? Absolutely nothing. And I mean, she never met Captain Cook. She never met Captain Phillip. She lived for a while, but not that far back. If they've got concerns about the early Australian colonial history, well, we'll take it up with the authors of it rather than Queen Elizabeth. And as for the AFLW, not many people watch their low-scoring games, but a minute's silence in respect for the Queen is actually a mark of respect for the Australian Constitution, because we'd lost our head of state. Whether you're Republican or not, whether you like it or not, we'd lost our Australian head of state. So you're respecting the Australian Constitution. And if these sporting outfits feel that way, they shouldn't accept funding from the Australian government. And the truth is, Rowan, that this non-stop leftist propaganda about genocide and white people and colonial woes and stolen land and stolen wages and on it goes, it's actually contributing, as so many left-wing policies do, to being counterproductive, because there's a wave of propaganda gone out there to Indigenous Australians to say you are a victim and your life and your existence is nothing more than victimhood.
I think it's the education system that explains why you can have young footballers or others who, either they took one too many footballs to the head, or else it was the education system, take your pick. But where do these vicious attitudes towards our history, our British settlement, colonial history, where does the kind of absolute hatred, you mentioned the genocide, theft of land, this and that, the cruelty, is there no recognition, Mark, of the upside, the benefits of British settlement of this continent?
No recognition of that whatsoever. It's a complete rewriting of Australian history. We were never a genocidal nation. There was no official policy of genocide. Governors like Lachlan Macquarie tried to be very generous to the Indigenous, play a civilising role, to give them the benefits of education, of housing. I mean, that was from the earliest days of Sydney settlement. So there's a rewriting of history here, and that's just plain wrong. Plain wrong to turn Australian historical records upside down, to vilify people like Lachlan Macquarie, who used to be a hero to left of centre politicians. Gough Whitlam always praised Lachlan.
We had Joe Biden saying that, unambiguously declaring that if China is to invade Taiwan, the US would respond, at which point Bob Carr, your former Labor colleague, I guess, jumped up and down and said, well, this is it. This is, we're now a nuclear target. What did you make of that?
Well, I think it's very important to put Chinese ambitions about Taiwan in perspective. The Chinese always take a longer view. And anyone in the Chinese leadership looking at Joe Biden would have to think, why would we want to go into Taiwan now and have a massive dispute, armed conflict, maybe nuclear conflict with the United States, when if the best they can put up as their leader is Biden, and that's where they're headed in the future, wait 30 years and you're probably just pushing on an open door to go in with the decline of the United States. So I don't think these issues are as pressing as people make out. I think we need to put them in their right perspective. Of course, it's a worry that China might have ambitions on Taiwan, but I don't think it's happening tomorrow. I think a lot of this rhetoric is inflated. I think Biden should put it in proper perspective and in fact be a more coherent, lucid leader, more capable and effective, and maybe the Chinese then would think their ambitions need to be postponed, not 30 years, but 50 or 100.
Exactly. Now, just before we go, Mark, I'm no stranger to, chanting Bohemian Rhapsody in the after a decent dinner party. But it appears Justin Trudeau has got into all sorts of trouble for doing just that. Have a quick look. They're all saying, how dare he do this a matter of hours or 24 hours before the Queen's funeral. There he was in London, chanting away to the Queen's Bohemian Rhapsody. Do you think that's the appropriate time, or are we being far too harsh on him and that we all should have a bit of Bohemian Rhapsody now and then?
Yeah, I think we're being a bit fussy here. It's the era of social media where anything captured on tape is put out there like this is some outrage. Justin Trudeau, if he wants to have a few drinks and sing a song the day before the funeral, having flown from Canada, I don't see a problem with that. He went to the funeral last night our time and seemed to behave without breaking into song in Westminster Abbey. I see a silhouette, and all that. And the,
there you go. I could ask you. I could ask for
words in the song. So
I could ask for a rendition here and now, Mark. We could go out on a high. We set social media alight. But what a shame.
I don't
exactly.
see a problem here. We're much too fussy about it. People are allowed to have a bit of fun in their downtime. Even
Fantastic.
Trudeau, who's obviously
even we'll let Trudeau off this time. Maybe he could do a bit of Leonard Cohen and Neil Young next time, just for Canadian self-esteem. That's it, Mark. Great to chat to you as always. We'll chat again soon. Thanks so much for coming on The World According to Rowan Dean this evening. Thanks, mate.
Scaramouche do the fandango. See you, Rowan.